Imagine waking up to a dream come true. Plates of steaming yam, sweet plantain, spicy soup, and golden fruit, all laid before you without lifting a single hand. But what begins as a blessing soon twists into a nightmare. In the silent hut of Ankuba, Kojo, the lazy boy, gasps for air as the food he once desired starts to multiply endlessly. Filling every corner, spilling through the windows, crawling toward him like living waves of plenty turned poison. The smell of sweetness rots into horror, and his cries echo into the night. Please, no more, but the feast does not stop. Each bite calls forth 10 more, each prayer drowned beneath the weight of gluttony. This is the story of the lazy boy who wished for endless food but couldn't escape its curse. A haunting tale of desire gone wrong, where comfort turns to torment, and a single wish teaches a lifetime of wisdom. Because sometimes the worst hunger is the one that never ends.
Fair African Tales. Subscribe and turn on the bell for new stories.
In the golden dawn of Ankoba, the village stirred with life. Smoke rose gently from clay huts as mothers roasted corn, the scent mingling with morning dew. Children's laughter echoed along the red earth paths, and the rhythmic clang of hoes striking soil filled the air like a song of labor and joy. Every creature seemed to know its duty. The goats bleated for release, the hens scratched eagerly for grain, and even the trees swayed as if greeting another day of work beneath the sun. But under one grand mango tree, untouched by the call of morning, lay Kojo. His eyes half open, his face softened by the comfort of shade, he stretched lazily and rolled to his side, as if the world's noise were only a lullaby meant to keep him dreaming. His mother's voice carried from the hut, firm yet weary. Kojo, the sun has risen before you again. Even the birds have had their meal. Kojo groaned and turned his face away from the light. The sun rises too early, he mumbled, half to himself. If only food could come to me, then there'd be no need for all this waking and sweating. His mother stepped out, hands on her waist, a wooden spoon in one hand and exasperation in her eyes. "My son," she said, shaking her head, "a stomach that waits for food without work will soon eat dust." But Kojo only yawned in reply, smiling faintly, his mind drifting back to pleasant dreams of endless bowls of yam and plantain that appeared by magic. Around him, life moved with purpose, the men in the fields, the women pounding yam, the children learning to weave baskets. Yet Kojo's world was still and lazy, ruled by the hum of bees and the sway of mango leaves above. He believed effort was for others, and that somehow luck would one day favor him. As the day brightened and laughter carried from the farms beyond, a small breeze brushed Kojo's face. He smiled, thinking it a sign of comfort, not knowing that somewhere within the rustle of the trees, fate had already begun to stir, listening to the careless wish of a boy who dreamed of food without sweat. The morning went on, warm and bright, but beneath the calm, destiny waited. The sun burned brighter that week in Ankoba, for it was the season of joy, the festival of yam, when every home brought forth the fruits of labor, when sweat turned into laughter and effort into feast. Drums echoed through the hills, children danced with calabashes on their heads, and the smell of roasted yam, pepper soup, and palm wine filled the air like a blessing. Women sang as they pounded yam in great mortars, the rhythm of their pestles rising like thunder in celebration of plenty. The men gathered under the iroko tree, boasting proudly about their harvests, while elders told tales of ancestors who tamed barren lands with courage and work. The whole village pulsed with gratitude, every voice, every heartbeat, a hymn to the soil. But on the far edge of the festival grounds, beneath the same mango tree that had become his throne of laziness, sat Kojo. His eyes followed the steam rising from cooking pots, his stomach grumbling like an angry drum. He watched the children bite into roasted yam dripping with palm oil, but he made no move to join them. "Why sweat in the sun?" he muttered, "when others can do it for you?" As he sulked, a figure appeared from the road, an old wanderer, cloaked in dust, with eyes deep as night, and a walking stick carved with ancient symbols. He moved slowly, but his presence drew the air still. The villagers greeted him with respect, for strangers on festival days were seen as carriers of fortune. The old man blessed the farmers, laying his hand on baskets of yam and murmuring prayers of plenty. When he reached Kojo, however, he paused, tilting his head. "Why do you sit apart, young one?" the wanderer asked, his voice like the rustle of leaves. Kojo sighed and shrugged. "I don't like work," he said boldly. "I only like to eat. If I could, I'd have food every day without lifting a hand." The old man's eyes glinted strangely, not with anger, but with something unreadable. "And is that truly your wish?" he asked softly. Kojo smirked. "Yes, endless food, so I'll never sweat again." The wanderer looked toward the festival, at the dancing farmers, at the bowls of yam cooked with love and effort. Then he turned back and placed a single bony finger on Kojo's forehead. His touch was cold, almost like wind from a cave. "Be careful what your hunger asks for," he whispered. "The stomach and the spirit do not crave the same meal." Before Kojo could reply, a gust of wind swept through the field. The drums faltered, a few flames flickered low, and for a heartbeat the laughter of Ankoba dimmed. When Kojo blinked, the old man was gone, his footprints already fading into dust. Kojo laughed nervously and brushed it off. "Strange old fool," he said. "If wishes were real, I'd be full by now." But somewhere beyond the horizon, where sky and soil met in the silence of magic, something ancient had heard him, and it was already stirring. When dawn broke over Ankoba, the roosters crowed and the sun painted the clay huts in soft gold. But under the old mango tree, something strange had awakened. Kojo stirred in his sleep, sniffing the air, his face twitching in disbelief. The smell was rich: roasted yam, spicy stew, ripe mango, sweet plantain, an aroma too real for dreams. He opened his eyes and gasped. Before him lay plates upon plates of steaming food, stacked high like offerings to unseen gods. Bowls of pounded yam glistened beside bubbling soup. Palm wine shimmered in calabashes. Roasted fish smoked softly in the morning air. For a moment, Kojo simply stared, his jaw dropping, his heart thumping with disbelief and excitement. He leapt up, grabbed a handful of food, and tasted it. It was warm, soft, and delicious beyond measure. "It's real!" he shouted, laughing as he shoveled mouthful after mouthful, tears of joy mixing with the stew dripping from his chin. "It's real! I'll never work again." Hours passed, and the food kept coming, plates appearing from thin air, refilling themselves as fast as he could eat. Word spread quickly through the village. Children peered from behind trees, whispering, "Kojo is blessed." Women crossed themselves and muttered prayers, wondering what spirit had favored such a lazy boy. Curiosity turned into excitement. Neighbors arrived, carrying empty bowls, hoping to share in the miracle. "Kojo brother, give us a little," they pleaded. Kojo laughed proudly and waved them closer, but when they tried to scoop from the plates, their spoons touched nothing. The food vanished under their hands, turning to air. They gasped and pulled back. Kojo blinked, confused. "Strange," he murmured. "Maybe it's only for me." And it was. Only he could eat. Only he could taste. The food existed for his hunger alone. At first, this filled him with pride. He lay back and ate until his belly rounded like a drum. "The gods have chosen me," he said, licking his fingers. "They know I was meant for comfort." But as days turned into nights, the blessing began to change its shape. The food no longer waited for him to wake. It appeared endlessly, spilling across the floor, piling higher, pressing against the walls. The scent grew heavy and sour. Ants gathered in rivers, flies buzzed in clouds, and the once sweet aroma turned into a choking stench of rot. Kojo tried to sleep, but the rustle of food kept him awake. Fruits rolling, pots clattering, soups bubbling without fire. When he tried to push them away, more appeared. His laughter faded into groans. "Stop," he whispered, "just stop." But the feast did not end. By the third day, his house had no space left. Bowls toppled over themselves, roasted yams rolled into corners, soup poured like rivers onto the floor. Kojo climbed onto his sleeping mat, surrounded by food that shimmered in the half-light like an endless sea. Outside, the villagers watched in uneasy silence. "Maybe it's not a blessing," someone whispered. "Maybe it's a curse." And as the moon rose high above Ankoba, the wind carried a faint echo through the village. The same whisper that had once warned him, soft and distant like a memory. "Be careful what your hunger asks for." The days that followed swallowed Kojo whole. What once felt like a dream of endless comfort had become a nightmare he could not wake from. His hut, once small but peaceful, now heaved under the weight of abundance gone mad. Every inch was buried in food. Pounded yam hardened into mounds like clay hills. Soup oozed from broken calabashes. Plantain and fish rotted in corners, drawing flies that hummed like angry spirits. The smell thickened the air until breathing itself felt like punishment. Kojo no longer smiled. Sleep had abandoned him. When he tried to close his eyes, the crackle of boiling stew or the soft plop of more food appearing kept him awake. He had stopped eating days ago, but the food refused to stop coming. It poured from nowhere, from air, from shadows, from dreams, steaming, dripping, mocking him. He covered his ears and screamed, "Please, no more!" But the feast only grew louder. He stumbled outside, desperate for air. Yet even there, the curse followed. Roasted yams rolled after him across the red soil like living things. Fruits burst from the trees, as if the earth itself mocked his hunger. Children who once played near his home now fled when they saw him coming, whispering tales of the boy haunted by food. Goats avoided his path, dogs howled and ran the other way. Even the flies seemed to follow him like a cloud of shame. Kojo's once round belly sagged from exhaustion. His eyes were hollow, his skin slick with sweat and grease. "What kind of blessing is this?" he cried into the sky, his voice breaking. "Why me?" But the sky gave no answer. Only the smell of rot and the sound of plates falling like rain replied. One night, a storm gathered over Ankoba, and lightning flashed through the cracks of his hut. The light illuminated the horror within. Mountains of food crawling with insects, the ground soft with decay. Kojo sat in the middle, his hands over his ears, his breath shallow. "Please," he whispered, rocking back and forth, "I don't want it anymore. I don't want it." But even then, the food came. Slow and relentless, it crept closer. Roasted yams rolling toward him, soup spilling across the floor, fruit tumbling from the ceiling. The air was thick and warm and wet, and Kojo could hear something almost human in the movement of it, as if the food itself was laughing. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, Kojo screamed. His cry was not just hunger anymore, it was terror. The boy who once wished to eat without effort was now drowning in plenty, suffocating under the weight of his own desire. And far away, beyond the storm, the old wanderer's words drifted through the wind once more, soft, distant, and cruelly true. The stomach and the spirit do not crave the same meal. The night Kojo finally fled his home, the moon hid behind a veil of clouds, and the village of Ankoba slept uneasy. The air was thick with the smell of rot and magic. Behind him, his hut groaned under the weight of its cursed feast, dishes toppling, soup spilling, the endless sound of plenty devouring itself. Barefoot and trembling, Kojo stumbled down the path that led out of the village. His once white cloth was stained with grease and dirt, his body weak from sleepless nights. Wherever he stepped, the ground shimmered, and food appeared before him, bowls of yam and plantain forming with each footfall, as though the curse itself followed to mock his escape. "Leave me alone," he cried into the night, kicking at the ghostly plates that vanished into mist. But the trail of food did not stop. It led him onward, through tall grass and whispering trees, until the familiar lands of Ankoba fell away behind him. The road grew steeper, colder, and lonelier. Ahead, lightning flashed over the distant sacred hills of Abina, where the elders said the spirits of the earth watched the hearts of men. By dawn, Kojo reached the foot of the hills. His strength gave way, and he fell to his knees. Tears cut through the dirt on his face as he raised trembling hands toward the sky. "Please," he begged, "whoever cursed me, forgive me. Take it back. I don't want the food anymore. I just want peace." His voice cracked with despair. "I'll work, I'll toil, I'll do anything. Please, help me." The wind fell still. The birds stopped their song. The world held its breath. Then, from behind the veil of morning fog, came the old wanderer. He looked the same as before, though his eyes now held both sadness and sternness. His staff struck the ground softly as he approached the kneeling boy. "Kojo," he said, his voice deep and calm, "you wished to eat without effort. You mocked the sweat of those who labor, and now you have learned the hunger that follows idleness." Kojo bowed his head, ashamed. "Please," he whispered, "I was foolish. I didn't know." The old man sighed, resting his hand on Kojo's shoulder. "The earth," he said, "is a living spirit. It feeds only those who serve it. You must give it what you have denied it, your work, your strength, your will. Nothing feeds the idle." Kojo lifted his weary eyes. "But I can barely stand." "Then crawl," the wanderer said. "Begin where you are. Each breath, each drop of sweat will loosen the curse. The land does not demand perfection, only effort." Kojo stared at the soil before him, dry, cracked, and waiting. His hands shook as he reached for a fallen branch, using it as a hoe. With trembling arms, he drove it into the earth. The first strike was weak, the second weaker. But with the third, the soil stirred, and something unseen shifted in the air. The wanderer watched in silence, a faint light in his eyes. "Keep working," he said gently. "The curse will not break until the land accepts you again." As the old man's figure faded back into mist, Kojo fell forward, his breath shallow but determined. Each strike of the branch against the ground echoed like a heartbeat, slow, heavy, alive. The food that had followed him began to dissolve into dust, carried away by the wind. For the first time in his life, Kojo worked not for comfort, but for freedom. The morning after his plea beneath the sacred hills, the air around Kojo felt strangely still, as though the world itself watched in silence, waiting for his next move. His body was weak, his hands blistered, but something within him had begun to change. Where fear once lived, a quiet resolve now stirred. He gripped the rough branch that served as his hoe and faced the dry patch of soil before him. The ground was stubborn, cracked and unyielding under the rising sun. Each swing of his makeshift hoe sent pain shooting through his arms, yet he did not stop. Every strike felt like a confession, a wordless apology to the earth he had once mocked. Sweat poured down his face, mingling with the dust, soaking into the same soil he had scorned. At first, nothing happened. Then, as the sun climbed higher, Kojo noticed the cursed food around him begin to fade. Bowls of yam turned to powder, fruits crumbled into ash, and the once suffocating aroma of endless meals drifted away like mist. With each stroke of his hoe, the curse grew weaker, as though the land was slowly forgiving him. Tears welled in his eyes. "Please," he whispered to the ground, "let me be worthy again." He dropped to his knees, dug small holes with trembling hands, and planted seeds he had gathered along the way: maize, yam, groundnut, whatever his shaking fingers could find. The earth received them gently. And for the first time, Kojo felt the soil breathe beneath his palms. Hours turned into days. Each dawn found him laboring. Each dusk left him collapsed in exhaustion. But the emptiness within him no longer felt hollow. It felt honest. As he worked, the last traces of magic vanished from the air. The endless food was gone, replaced by silence, clean and pure. One evening, when his strength was nearly spent, Kojo looked up and saw green, tiny shoots pushing through the soil, fragile but alive. His chest tightened with joy. He laughed, a sound half broken, half free. Then, carried on the wind like the voice of memory, came the soft echo of the old wanderer. "Now you are fed by the land, not by your laziness." Weeks later, when the plants matured, Kojo harvested his first yam, small, imperfect, but real. He built a little fire beside the hills, roasted it, and ate with only a pinch of salt. The taste filled his mouth, warm and simple. Tears ran down his cheeks as he chewed slowly, reverently. Never had food tasted so alive. As dusk fell, Kojo sat by the field he had made with his own hands, watching fireflies dance over the rows of young crops. The curse had lifted, and in its place remained something far greater: peace. For the first time in his life, Kojo understood hunger not as a punishment, but as a teacher. And in that quiet moment, beneath the wide and forgiving sky, the lazy boy who once wished for endless food became a man who had learned the true sweetness of labor. The road back to Ankoba was long, winding through golden fields and whispering trees, yet Kojo walked it with light in his heart and calloused hands. Gone was the boy who had once dreamed of food without effort. In his place was a young man whose eyes carried the calm of understanding. When the village huts came into view, smoke rising gently from their fires, Kojo paused, breathing in the scent of life he had once been too idle to earn. The villagers saw him before he spoke. Some gasped. His clothes were torn, his frame lean as a reed. But his smile was steady, peaceful. Mothers whispered prayers of gratitude, elders nodded in silent approval, and children stared with wide, curious eyes at the boy who had vanished into gluttony and returned reborn. His mother ran to him, tears streaming down her face, clutching his hands as if afraid he would disappear again. "My son," she said through sobs, "you've come home." Kojo bowed his head. "Yes, Mama, and this time, I've brought something worth more than food." From that day on, Kojo rose with the sun. He joined the other farmers in the fields, his laughter echoing through the morning air. He no longer hid beneath the mango tree. Instead, he worked beneath it, tilling, watering, and planting. And every afternoon, the children gathered around him, eager to hear the tale of his curse and redemption. He would smile, settle into the shade, and begin. "Once I thought the earth owed me food, but I learned the land only feeds the hands that serve it." The children would giggle, their faces full of awe, and he would ruffle their hair and add, "The hand that works never starves." Seasons passed, and Kojo's garden flourished, neat rows of yam and maize, fruits that grew rich under his care. The villagers often shared in his harvest, not because of magic, but because of his heart. In his humility, Kojo became a quiet teacher. In his labor, he found joy. One evening, as the sun melted into a pool of gold on the horizon, the storyteller's voice, calm and timeless, drifted through the fields. "Hunger is not an enemy. It is the drum that calls us to work." And so the village of Ankoba learned from Kojo's journey. Where once there was idleness, there grew diligence. Where once there was greed, there bloomed gratitude. Beneath the mango tree, where the lazy boy once dreamed of endless food, now sat a man who had tasted wisdom and found peace in every seed he sowed.
Subscribe for more amazing African stories.